Good afternoon. I'm Phil Bryant. I had the great honor of being the 64th governor of the state of Mississippi. And here at the Reagan Institute and Foundation, it is my great honor to be a part of the RISE occasion. So welcome and welcome all of you at home. We're glad to have you. And hopefully one day soon you'll be able to return to our nation's capital and see the beauty and honor that is Washington, D.C. I came here in September of 1986. A young JC, the Junior Chamber of Commerce. I went to the White House in the Roosevelt Room to meet Ronald Reagan. We sat there in that room, about 50 of us, waiting for the president. It seems as if he would never come. He was delayed. That happens, I understand, when you're president. Finally, he came into the room and he walked to the podium in that great, beautiful brown suit and said, "Well," y'all remember that? "Well, I'm going to tell you, like Liz Taylor told her fifth husband, don't worry, I won't keep you long." And he had us all of us was there in that moment with the character of America, which was Ronald Reagan. But he saved his best words, his most enlightening part for America about education. President Reagan reminded us that our leaders must remember that education doesn't begin with some isolated bureaucracy in Washington. It doesn't even begin in the state or local governments. Education begins at home, and indeed, it truly does, where it is a parental right and a responsibility to begin their children's education. Those words are as true today as they were in 1982, because like so much of what President Reagan said, it expresses a fundamental truth. We're here with two great leaders today. I want to introduce them because I realize as governor, as does Governor Hogan, that we had not only a right, but a responsibility, a sacred responsibility to create the best environment possible for parents and educators and administrators, but most of all for students. We should always remember the words of the president that education does, in fact, begin at home, and virtual learning made that abundantly clear this past year. It continues in the classroom. We hope the classroom now of the future. And in our American system, it is the states working with schools and local boards who have the most influence over whether classrooms have the tools and resources they need to succeed. And to do that, sometimes governors have to cajole and convince and corral legislators, even in your own party, to just simply do the right thing. When I left office in Mississippi, we were achieving our highest graduation rates ever. With the help of Jobs for American Graduates, we went from around 70% to exceeding the national average of graduation. Our fourth graders led the nation in advanced reading. Let me say that again. Mississippi's fourth graders in 2019 led the nation in reading advancement. If it happened in Mississippi, it can happen anywhere. So today we're going to hear about the successes in Maryland by one of the most popular governors in America, particularly now that I'm not a governor. Larry Hogan is here with a conversation with the wonderful, incomparable Juan Williams. So ladies and gentlemen, let me again introduce the great governor of the state of Maryland, Larry Hogan, and Mr. Juan Williams. Gentlemen, thank you.
Governor Bryant, thank you for leaving the stage. Now he is the most popular governor in the room.
He's a tough act to follow, though. That's putting us in a tough spot.
I think he got the Reagan accent down. He's that good. He's that good. Governor Hogan, thank you for being with us this afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Talk about education, as Governor Bryant was said. This conversation will really focus on crisis to innovation in the area of education and what our public officials, the Governor of Maryland, is doing in that area. But as we get into it, also something that Governor Bryant mentioned is that we're still dealing with the aftermath of this, and arguably still in the midst of this pandemic, trying to deal with this. And so it raises the question how schools are going to deal with it going into the fall. Right now, there are conversations about whether young people should wear a mask in the classroom or not. I'm sure you're aware of that. Earlier this month, you declared an end to the COVID emergency in the state of Maryland. So what are you doing as governor? What are you saying to your students, to your parents, to your teachers about coming back to school in the fall?
Well, so our state, first of all, thank you very much. Thank you, Juan. It's great to see Governor Bryant, who's a good friend, and I want to thank the Reagan Institute for putting on this great conference and appreciate the invitation. I authorized every school in Maryland to open last August. About more than half of our school systems did, and we've been open the entire time without serious problems. Some of our larger jurisdictions, their duly elected local school boards have the authority to make those final decisions, and some of them made the decision to either work, in a hybrid situation, or to, in one or two cases, actually keep most kids out of the schools for an entire year. First and foremost, in the fall, our State Board of Education, at my very strong urging, is insisting on every single one of our schools and our school system be open 100% for kids in the fall. I think our kids have fallen so far behind during COVID, but we've taken real steps to make sure that they're safe. First of all, Maryland has one of the best vaccination rates in America. We've now vaccinated 76% of the people over 18 and 93% of the people over 65. And I think we're at, as of today, 56% of our 12 to 17-year-olds, which we really just started doing just a couple of weeks ago, and they're now catching up. So we're in a good state of the virus is under control in a great way in Maryland. Our positivity rate down around 1%. Our hospitalizations are down. But we put about $1.2 billion into the schools for heating and air conditioning, ventilation systems. We provided unlimited amounts of PPE to keep people safe. Schools have made all kinds of alterations to make sure that they kept the kids safe over the past year. We were the first state in the nation to start vaccinating teachers, which we started in January. Oh. Nearly every single teacher that wanted a vaccine has already gotten a vaccine. We're obviously still paying attention to the Delta variant and the people who are unvaccinated, and we're still doing everything we can to encourage those final 24% of our folks to take it seriously and to get the vaccine. It's the way to keep you safe. But we think we got a good plan to get all our kids back in school, and I think it's critically important.
Absolutely. Now, what are you hearing about vaccinating kids under 12?
So Robert Redfield, who's a former CDC director, is one of our advisors. He's very close to it. I have a great team of public health doctors and epidemiologists that are giving us good advice throughout the entire pandemic. I was leading the National Governors Association through this, so I've been focused on this from the beginning. I think we've had a good response. So I don't know personally, but some of them they believe that in the third quarter, probably not by the time we get our kids back in school in a few weeks, but sometime this fall, that we'll have the ability to offer vaccines to the younger kids.
Let's go then to the whole notion of innovation in education, investing for the long haul. We've seen a wave of unprecedented federal funding prompted by the pandemic in terms of investing in education for the kind of precautions that you just mentioned, but it's also opened the door to some reinvention in the area of education. I wonder if you could speak to all of us here about the balance between innovation and maintaining improvements in everyday education, because people want better schools no matter what.
Right. Well, they want better results for the kids. Right. And so it's really, you have to do both. We're talking about investing in innovation and investing in making all of the efforts that we've been doing in education pay off, that we actually stop failing our kids and we get people the education they deserve. I happen to believe very strongly that every single child in our state and across America deserves a world-class education, regardless of what neighborhood they happen to grow up in. And it's been our top priority since I've been governor nearly 7 years now. We've invested nearly $50 billion into education. It's 64% of our capital budget. Dramatic increases 7 years in a row. But money is not just the answer to the problems. We know that for a fact. We have some of the best and most highly funded schools in America, but we've also got some persistently failing schools. And so we've been pushing for more accountability with our local school boards. all kinds of creative ways to fix our persistently failing schools. We pushed school choice and charter schools and innovation, P-TECH schools, which is a great opportunity for kids to learn STEM education and get their 2-year AA degree at the same time they're getting their high school diploma, has mentorships and summer internships and guaranteed jobs when they get out of school. So innovation is critically important, but we're using some of this federal money to do things like we've invested $300 million in broadband to make sure that we can get access to high-speed internet to every single child and every single household in the state. It's mostly rural broadband there, believe it or not, even in our pretty, concentrated state here surrounding DC and the Mid-Atlantic region, we've got some areas that they don't have access to high-speed internet. We're going to connect every single household, urban broadband, rural broadband. We saw during COVID how important that was. Now, I don't want our kids to be forced into remote learning like before, but I think we do need to invest in broadband. We've done some very innovative things. We've got, for some of those schools, giving parents who are in a neighborhood where they have a school that's failing the kids, and we have some of them, in Baltimore City, for example, we invest about 2 or 3 times more there per pupil than we do in the rest of the state, and yet the results are not acceptable. Yeah. And so we actually started a scholarship program for school choice, so even allow, number one, charter schools and working on fixing the broken schools, but letting neighborhoods take over the failing schools after 2 years of them not performing and getting their test scores up. But we're also providing scholarships to let underprivileged kids attend the non-public school of their choice, and they're going to, in some cases, private schools when the public schools can't fix the problem for them.
You also, speaking of this, created something I think is pretty unique: Office of an Inspector General for Education.
Yeah.
I guess the idea there is to root out corruption, but it was also then funnel legitimate monies to innovation.
Look, so I mentioned we've invested $50 billion. So it's a big focus to improve these schools. We put $3.8 billion in a school construction program, the largest in history, to bring every single school to accomplish every need of every local school system, to build the schools of the future for the 21st century. But we have local school systems that get all these tens of billions of dollars, and then they're not accountable. Right. We can't control how they spend the dollars and whether or not they're successful. And we want to make sure that every dollar gets into the classrooms and that the programs are really working and that we're getting the kids the education that they deserve. It's not always happening. And we've got a lot of waste. We've got some fraud. We've got some problems with local school boards that just aren't doing the job. And so it's an uphill battle. I pushed for accountability measures at the state because I said if the state taxpayers are going to be investing all these billions of dollars in improving our kids' opportunities and give them a better chance for a better future, we want to make sure that they're spending that money wisely, and that the parents and teachers and students and taxpayers are getting their money's worth, and that those dollars are doing the most good by giving kids more of an opportunity and giving them the education that they deserve.
And it wasn't viewed as interference in local school board affairs?
Well, we had some disagreements about that. Look, I'm a Republican governor in the bluest state in America. I have a 70% Democratic legislature. We don't always agree with our local school boards, and sometimes there's a little bit of friction, like when I was trying to get them back in school, and some of them did not want to. But on this one, we really came together. It was working across the aisle with our local governments, with people in both parties, to say, there's nothing more important than making sure that we give our kids the best opportunity, that we give them the best education that we can give them. And we came together and got it done in a bipartisan way.
Well, that deserves accolades. Now, a moment ago, you mentioned world-class education. You mentioned this in your State of the State address as well. So I wondered if you could help us here at the Reagan Institute understand, what does that constitute? What constitutes a world-class education in your mind? I just want to mention, in conjunction with this, that you have this boost program for vouchers, and that you have Class Act, which you mentioned earlier, which allows local officials to get involved when the schools are rated as failing and to try to reconstruct those schools?
Actually, yeah. So on the Boost Scholarship Program, we've put about $50 million into this, just as of this last year, into scholarships for deserving kids, underprivileged kids who can't afford to come out of those failing schools in those neighborhoods to attend the school of their choice. And it's made a world of difference. And we aren't able to reach enough kids, but the kids who have had the opportunity to go to another school, it's turned their lives around. And so that's, again, something we got through a Democratic legislature, even though they normally typically would not be in favor of scholarships or school choice. But we found at least some common ground. It wasn't as big of a program. We wanted to cover even more kids, but it was a step in the right direction. On the Class Act, it enables, if you have a persistently failing school in a tough neighborhood where kids are not reaching, not seeing improvement, not enough kids are able to perform in math or in English or whatever, they're falling below the necessary requirements. The local community can actually come in and we can take over that school.
Now, what does that mean? Because when you say local community, I think the school board, but that wouldn't be.
No, this is to take it away from the school board.
That's what I was thinking.
And to make them more accountable. It's really look. I mean, I don't want to point fingers, and I apologize if there's any school board members here or locals. Some of our local school systems do an amazing job, but sometimes the teachers union and our school boards are fighting when we're trying to make efforts to improve failing schools. There's a resistance, and that's, we're trying to overcome that and make them more accountable to the parents, to the teachers, and most importantly, to the students who they're failing.
Well, I can't see how, and many people would want to argue beyond that one. Mental health. You were talking about how we've gone through this period where, in some cases, some school systems in your state didn't have classes. So it was all virtual. And then, of course, you said there was some hybrid education. One of the things that can get overlooked in this is the impact it has on students, alienation, falling behind in terms of their educational progress, mental health issues. And I wonder if you could if you have thought about this, if you have any thoughts about how we as a country should be dealing with this.
Well, this is an issue that was already a serious problem in America. And the issue of mental health is something that we've focused on and invested more money in. Throughout the pandemic, we saw every kind of statistic go up. It impacted just about everyone. And we saw, our opioid numbers went up, and, alcoholism and mental health calls to our call centers. Everything was overloaded because it impacted a lot of folks, but particularly young people, our kids, who didn't have the social interaction, that had a difficult time coping with everything that we were going through. So we've taken a couple of steps. We put about nearly $100 million into our school system for upgrading mental health counseling, putting more money in to make sure that we can identify at-risk youth and provide the services that they need, put more money into tutors to help kids to get caught up from when they've fallen behind. We signed into law, again, a bipartisan effort with our Democratic legislature. Congressman Jamie Raskin, who's a Maryland congressman, his son sadly committed suicide on the last day of 2020 on New Year's Eve. And we signed into the law a bill in his son's name, Tommy Raskin. And it was about, we have a successful 211 program where seniors, we have counselors check in with them. You don't have to just call a crisis line when you have an issue. We have people that are following up proactively to see how they're coming along. We broaden that with the Raskin Act for mental health. So if somebody, we have mental health counselors who are touching base with people just to make sure that they're doing okay. And it's just a new program, but it seems to be, a lot of people are taking advantage of it.
You mean, so it's for students, it's for children?
It's for anybody of any age, but it's named after Jamie Raskin's son, and it is impacting a lot of kids.
One last thing. The workforce connection.
Yeah.
Lots of employers say, well, yeah, this kid has a high school diploma, but it's not relevant in terms of the skills I need for my workforce. And I'm wondering, in the state of Maryland, if you are doing anything to bridge that gap.
We are, and it's a critical issue. We have some of the best workforce job training programs. We're noted across the country for the programs we've done. It takes on a lot of iterations. Look, there are so many different, we're trying to prepare our kids for the jobs of the future, and we're trying to give them an education that's practical. So one thing we've done, we've got just this past year, as not a whole lot was getting done, we added 27 new apprenticeship programs. We now have 95 different careers that we're helping young, not just young people, returning citizens, people of any age, but it's really helping our kids, go into a career that works. We have an earn grant program, which is, I think, the first of its kind in the nation, where we work with the private sector on designing the programs to teach the skills that are needed for the jobs that are available today. Instead of we're training people for something that there's no demand for, we're getting the private sector to work with our community colleges, every one of them across the state, in providing training that can help people get jobs right away. For example, in our state, we're the cyber capital of America. We're the headquarters of NSA and the U.S. Cyber Command, Fort Meade. We produce about 80,000 people with cyber certificates and degrees with 13 different centers of cyber excellence. They don't need a 4-year college degree, and they can come out and get really high-paying jobs. That's something you normally think of apprenticeships as the building trades, which we're also very supportive of. But we're going into computer sciences and helping young people, including we started a program called Girls Who Code. It was reaching junior high kids, especially females who weren't going into learning about computers. And it's been a tremendously successful effort.
Well, you mentioned earlier PTech, which I think is Pathways in Technology.
Yes.
And is that what is that?
So PTech is a wonderful program. It was started by IBM in New York. My chief legislative officer brought this to me early on, and he said, look, what's going on here. We brought it into our state. We got our legislature to pass it. We worked with our school systems. It's an incredible program where companies will basically adopt a school. We work together with our community colleges, kids in disadvantaged areas who really felt like they had no opportunity and no hope. We've gone into these communities with a company that they provide, STEM education to get kids focused on the things that are important that can help them get a job. They give them summer internships. They assign someone from their company to be a mentor. They're first in line for jobs when they graduate, and they get a 2-year AA degree at the same time as their high school diploma, for free.
Very good.
We also have a scholarship program for lower income people to get free 2-year college tuitions at our community colleges. And all those programs together have helped set people up for more jobs, which is, we've had 13 straight months of job growth. And right now we've got more than 300,000 jobs available, and we've got a worker shortage. We're trying to put more people to work.
Pretty awesome. Last night, President Biden was on television doing a town hall and speaking about the need for us to protect our democratic values in America. And that's part of that is taking place in the classroom. But how do you teach something like that to young people so that they appreciate the notion of an American democracy?
Well, I didn't see the president's town hall. I was actually here with the Reagan Institute, which was a terrific program, and had some good discussions last night. But there's no question about that. And I think that's really a part of what the Reagan Institute is about. It's critically important that our kids learn, American values and American democracy. And I'm very concerned about it, frankly. When we start to undermine the very basics of democracy, when we look at the situation that happened on January 6th at the Capitol, when we tell people that you can't trust our democratic processes in the country, that elections aren't fair, and that this is really, it's hard to get our young people to feel as if our democratic values matter as much as they used to, but they really are important. We were just there's a group, the Fordham Institute, just did a study across the country and rated us as one of the best in the country for our American history and civics classes in the state, our curriculum, which is very balanced, and it really tries to encourage more civic engagement with our young people, because they've got to really pay attention to this. President Reagan said that we're never more than one generation away from losing democracy, and it's a scary thought. I think it's probably, those words are more pertinent than ever.
Governor Hogan, thank you. Thank you very much for coming out here.
Thank you so much, Juan. It was wonderful.
My pleasure.
Thank you.